story this morning. Well, Eskom representatives will this morning appear before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. The power company will have to shed some light on a very concerning report by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Well, Annika Larsen joins us now from outside Parliament to talk about what we can expect. Annika, a very good morning to you. And what are the questions, what are the concerns around this report?
Good morning, Yuveka. Yes, SCOPA chairperson last week, Themba Godi, made a special request for Eskom to come to Parliament and answer some very pertinent questions regarding this deal Eskom made with Tegeta for nearly 4 billion rands worth of what may be substandard coal. Now remember that Tegeta is owned by Jacob Zuma's son Duduzane and the Gupta family, and Treasury last week told SCOPA that there was no competitive bidding process done to obtain this coal. It was done under emergency procurement regulations, which means sometimes corporate good governance can be sidestepped in the name of an emergency, which seems it may have happened here. Now Eskom has been called, they've been summoned to Parliament today to explain why there wasn't a competitive bidding process and why regulations weren't followed as identified in a PricewaterhouseCoopers report that was actually commissioned by Eskom itself. And what's interesting for me, Yuveka, is whether Brian Molefe, who's the CEO again, will present himself to Parliament despite what's been said by the ANC NEC over the weekend that his position should be rescinded.
So, Annika, why should we care about the story? Why should we care about what is in this report and what's being discussed? What is at stake here for the country, especially when it comes to Eskom and everything that it's been embroiled in recently?
Well, I think there's several reasons for me, at least. One is corporate good governance. Has it been followed? And if not, then why not? And I think there's so much money involved here. It's more than 3.7 billion rand. I think that the country needs to know why that money was spent on substandard coal, if it indeed was substandard, and why proper procurement regulations were not followed. And then just the overall sense in this country of the consequences for corporate good governance not being followed, and what should happen next. Should people be answerable for when corporate good governance is not followed, when the taxpayers' money at SOEs appears to be used like a personal bank for certain members of authority, and lastly, Parliament's oversight function. Is Parliament, and I believe that SCOPA is led by a very efficient chair, Themba Godi, is Parliament doing enough to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And as I said earlier, Yuveka, what will the consequences be for this?
Well, as you said, Annika, we don't know if Brian Molefe is going to be here. Who from Eskom are we expecting to answer these questions today, then, if not him?
Well, that's a very good question, Yuveka, because Machele Koko, who was the acting CEO, he's been placed on long leave while there's an investigation into him and a so-called contract he may have given his daughter under dubious circumstances. That's being investigated by Eskom. Brian Molefe hasn't been seen since he skipped back into Eskom from Parliament. So this will sort of be the first time we've seen him back in Parliament in his new Eskom CEO position, his old new Eskom CEO position. And I think that he's quite the man of the moment because he hasn't spoken out despite all this talk about his 30 million rand golden handshake not being paid out, his return to Eskom, and now the ANC itself saying that his position should be rescinded, which I don't know under Labour regulations is actually possible, but where to next from him? I will try and get those questions, but he seems to be quite shy when asked pressing questions here in Parliament.
All right, thanks very much for that. We'll wait and hear and see who's going to be there, who's going to answer those questions. Annika Larsen from outside Parliament for us this morning.